For the record, the microphone's on now. My name is Randy Rouse, and I'm the chair of the SBCAG board. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Rouse. For the roll call, Directors Lee?
Here.
Hartman? Here. Capps?
Here.
Nelson?
Here.
Lavanino? Perotti?
Here.
Clark? He's here somewhere. Mosby?
Present.
Julian?
Here.
Patino?
Here.
Brown?
Here.
Silva?
Here.
And Chair Rouse.
Here.
Oh, Director Clark? Here.
Thank you. All right, very good. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready and begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Madam Clerk, is there any public comment?
Chair Rouse, we have one request for public comment. Mr. Scott Wins.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Madam Clerk, for the record, are you keeping time? Are you keeping time? Thank you.
I'm short, but I'm not that short. Scott Wins, representing Cars Are Basic. Happy New Year to you all. One of the slams that have been repeatedly leveled at Cars Are Basic has been the fact that we're negative. I want to ask you something. Is it negative when this board and the MTD board were incapable of understanding felonious mismanagement and the forced resignation of 50% of its board and the firing of its director? Was it improper and negative to come to you and say, we have a better plan for MTD that's been used in other countries, and we'd like to sit down and talk with you about it? We did this 2 years ago. Not one member from this board, not one member from your staff ever called us up and said, what's your plan? Is it negative to point out that the city of Santa Barbara, in crushing its transportation grid, has absolutely hammered its retail businesses? Is it negative to point out that there's not one single study in the nation of the United States proving that bulb outs make pedestrians safer? All we've done is we've tried to come to you with positives. We came to you with a positive. You have a PhD over here who knows biological science and knows circadian rhythm. We said, narrow daylight savings time down by 2 months and you will solve the problems based upon hard science. You're going to have to come to a realization, folks. Somewhere along the line, being forced by the state of California to do things is wrong. You've all received the letter that I sent out. RENA, AUD, and so forth have to go because it's driving communities into the absolute downgrade because they no longer have the ability to meet their resources. They no longer have the ability to meet the streets. You saw down in South where they took bulldozers, D9 coming in and just shoving cars aside because the streets couldn't handle the emergency response. So what are you going to do in your cities? What are you going to do in your districts? Something has to change here, folks. And we have an open invitation to anybody on this board at any time. Sit down with us for an hour. Talk about transportation. We'll be more than happy to speak with you.
Thank you. Any further public commenters, Madam Clerk?
Chair Ross, we have no request for public comment.
And are there anyone online as well? No. Okay, thank you. All right, move on to the consent calendar. Any directors have to pull any items from the consent calendar for discussion? Are there any members of the public that pull the consent item for discussion? Okay, very good. And then we'll take a motion for the approval of consent calendar.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the consent calendar.
Moved by Nelson,
Hartman,
second by Patino. Okay, very good. May we have a roll call vote, please?
We're all here and present.
Well, okay. That's not what my notes say. Okay, very good. Then we'll move on.
Then we can do voice vote.
Voice vote. Okay, very good. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thanks. All right. Very good. Madam Clerk, would you please read the next item, 5A?
5A, SBCAG 2025 Committee Appointments. Recommended action. 5A1, appoint one delegate and alternate to the California Association of Councils of Governments, CalCog. 5A2, appoint one delegate and alternate to the Los Angeles, San Diego, San Luis Obispo Rail Corridor Agency, LOSAN. 5A3, appoint one delegate and alternate to the Coast Rail Coordinating Council. 5A4, appoint one member and one alternate to the CalVans Board of Directors. 5A5, appoint members to the Highway 154 Safety Committee. 5A6, appoint members to the SBCAG Executive Committee, Chair, Vice Chair, Immediate Past Chair, and Chairs of North County and South Coast Subregional. 5A7, appoint an SBCAG delegate to participate in the Central Coast Coalition Sacramento Legislative Advocacy Day, tentatively scheduled for March 18th and 19th, 2025. And 5A8, appoint the SBCAG Chair, Vice Chair, and Immediate Past Chair to participate in legislative advocacy activities in Washington, D.C. in May 2025.
Thank you. Director Kern.
Directors, you may go through these items one by one and volunteer for these slots. Terry Contreras has the list of who's currently in those slots and which ones actually need a nomination, because those are now vacant because some members are no longer on the board. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Terry to go through which ones need those appointments. Thank you.
Currently for CalCog last year, 2024, was Director Osborne and Director Patino. Osborne was the primary member and Director Patino was the alternate. Looking for my main member and
Okay. so
Volunteers.
volunteers. And if Director Patino wants to remain as the alternate?
Director Patino?
That would be fine.
Okay, and as far as the member, is there someone who desires to be the member of the CalCog? Okay, well,
Let me ask, can I ask a question for
Director
staff?
Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Rouse. So it says 2 or 3 meetings a year. Can you kind of give some timeframes on those?
Sure.
And where they're at, probably in the Valley or in Sacramento, I imagine?
Most of them are available by Zoom, so you can attend via Zoom. There are in-person meetings, but that's an elective if you want to attend in person. Basically, they review statewide priorities as metropolitan planning organizations or regional transportation planning organizations of things that we need to advocate on a statewide basis on our behalf. So 2 or 3 meetings a year and can be participated remotely.
With that in mind, I wouldn't mind taking the regular member. I'm doing a lot of advocacy in Sacramento already for our county, so it might hopefully coincide with some of that other activities, so I'll hop in there.
Thank you, Director
Thank you.
Nelson. And Director Kern, if we could actually have the frequency of and types of meetings with each category, because there are enough new members on the board now
Okay.
that'd be great. Okay, Ms. Contreras.
The next committee is LOSAN. A primary member last year was Director Williams, and Director Perotti was the alternate. We're looking for a new primary member, unless Director Perotti would like to
First
step
of all,
up
Ms.
as primary.
Director Kern, can you tell us about the types
Sure.
and frequency of the meetings?
These meetings are scheduled on every month, if that's correct.
Usually. And actually, I attached all the schedules to
Yeah.
the staff reports. You probably didn't print them out,
We're
but
assuming we read that, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
all good. But
That's okay.
these meetings are Brown Act meetings, so whereas the CalCog meetings are not, these meetings are Brown Act. So if you are attending remotely, your location would need to be on the agenda physically on the agenda, but you can attend remotely via that method. But it basically is directing the policy direction for the low sand service, basically Amtrak from San Luis Obispo all the way to San Diego. So it is a pivotal decision-making board of the service that is provided along our corridor, and there's things that we want to see happen in the next few years in increasing service in our the north of LA route. So we would like some participation on this board for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess the first thing we should ask if Director Prodi would like to be the member as opposed to
I'm
the alternate.
interested in being the permanent member.
Being the
Primary.
the primary? Okay,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
good. And so the primary, you are interested in being the primary? Or you're?
Yes.
Yes, okay, very good. And then we'd have the alternate then.
Sure, I'll be.
Okay. Thank you, Director Lee.
Thank you.
So it'll go the other way around like that. Very good. Okay. Madam Clerk?
Okay, next committee is Coastal Rail Coordinating Council. Last year's primary member was Director King, and Chair Ross was the alternate.
Okay, very good. And I will move up to primary on that.
Okay.
And do we have anybody that would like to be the alternate for that? Okay, very good. Director Brown, thank you.
Okay, the next is Calvans. Director Nelson is the primary member with Director Julian as the alternate.
Yeah, I would
Thank you.
appreciate the opportunity. I currently serve as the vice chair of that organization, and we're in a pretty transformative stage of that organization. So thank you guys for continuing to let me serve on that.
Okay, thank you both. Appreciate that.
Okay, next committee is the Highway 154 Safety Committee. Consists of 5 members. Currently we have Director Hartman, Director Capps, Director Perotti, Director King, and Director Infante also served on that committee.
So I chair that. I would love to continue, and I think the two Davids should be part of that, given Buellton and Solvang and their key interest in 154, as well as
Sullivan Brown, are we good with that? Very good.
yeah, and
Perfect.
Director Capps and Perotti for the South Coast.
You've been appointed. Great. Very good. Thank you. Madam
Okay.
Clerk.
Next is the Executive Committee, which consists of the chair, the vice chair, the immediate past chair, the North County Subregional Chair, and the South Coast Subregional Chair. Last year's were Director Lavanino, Director Rouse, Director Osborne, Director Patino, and Director Capps. So North County and South Coast have not chosen chairs for 2025 yet, so we can bring those back.
So we can do
Or
it
just-
by default. Whoever is elected chair of each of those committees would be assigned to the executive committee. And so the former past chair will be Steve Lavanino and Rouse and Nelson as the chair and vice chair. So it's the same 5. We'll just leave the names blank until the South Coast and North County elect their chairs.
Very good. Thank you. And then next one, Madam Clerk.
Central Coast Advocacy Day, we didn't have a delegate for last year, so we need a delegate for this year.
So this is a day and a half commitment, and then there's some pre-briefings before. And it's basically the Central Coast Coalition from Santa Cruz down to Santa Barbara. We take a platform of issues to Sacramento, and we advocate on our behalf. And this is a pivotal year for us because we are applying for the final segment of 101. So we will be advocating in front of the California Transportation Commission as well as state representatives and other decision makers at the state level. So it would be very nice to have an elected delegate to attend this day. It's scheduled for March 19th, but we would fly up the day before. We can arrange travel based on your schedules, so we'll be as flexible as possible, but it's a full day on the 19th that you would have to dedicate to this assignment. Thank you.
All right, very good. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that last section of the highway happens to be in my backyard. So if anybody else would really desire it, fine. If not, I will step into that.
Thank you.
Everybody good with that? Okey-doke, whether I like it or not, there I am. All right, very good. Thank you. And with that,
One more. Yeah.
The final one is the federal legislative Washington trip.
oh, there it is.
Last year was, it consists of the chair, the vice chair, and the immediate past chair, which this year would be Director Rouse, Director Nelson, and Director Lavanino.
And this is basically a week-long commitment, 2 days of travel with 2 to 2.5 days of hard work of going to many, many meetings and talking about SBCAG and what we do and why we do it and advocating on our behalf.
And good meals.
Yeah, and good meals. Yeah, you have to pace yourself on your eating.
And Director Kern, have we nailed down a date for that yet, or we,
I'm sorry, what?
you've nailed down a date for the Washington trip? yet?
Yes, it's the last week in May.
Okay.
So
very
we
good.
have that on the calendar.
Thank you. And then, Madam Clerk, do we need to have a vote to confirm these appointments?
Yes, we need a motion and a second to confirm the appointments.
Okay, may I have a motion to that?
Hartman moves.
Moved by Hartman.
Second.
Second by Patino. And what you can do is to voice vote then. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? So ordered. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, item 5B, please.
Item 5B is peak hour morning train startup agreement. Approve and authorize the executive director to execute an agreement with the Southern California Regional Rail Authority and Ventura County Transportation Commission to provide startup costs to SCRA for the initial Ventura-Santa Barbara Intercounty Commuter Trail Service to be negotiated comparable to the attached for $449,890, with SBCAG contributing an amount not to exceed $224,945, sorry, with the term ending June 30th, 2026, upon review and approval by legal counsel.
Very good. Mr. Bonfilio.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Board of Directors. For the record, my name is Aaron Bonfilio, Director of the Multimodal Programs for SBCAG, and we have a brief presentation for you today. It'll be coming up shortly. All right, wonderful. So this item has been presented to the South Coast Subregional Committee a number of times over the past year and a half or so, but for everyone's benefit, we're going to do a brief overview of the project so far. And on this slide here is a general orientation of the presentation today. So we'll be going over the overall service concept. What do we mean when we talk about lane in a train? And the latest activities that staff and our various partners have been engaged in, as well as the proposal that we've arrived at presently, and funding for such service, and then the overall agreement, or excuse me, the action before you today, which is to approve or consider approval of a startup agreement, and then the timeline of next steps. Thank you. All right, so what do we mean when we talk about the lane in the train, or rather this project overall? For a number of years, SBCAG and our partners in Ventura County have been studying and looking into the opportunities available for operating train service that would complement the existing commute patterns between Ventura County and Santa Barbara County. Over the years, there's been a number of studies done, and repeatedly, time and again, we arrived at working with the LoSan or Amtrak service provider to operate what would effectively be retimed Amtrak service in the corridor. That service did operate briefly for a period of time. However, it was cut during the pandemic due to a variety of issues, but primarily lack of demand, as the pandemic caused that kind of writ large for the region, but as well overall struggles with equipment availability and funding from the state following the pandemic. So that said, the partners in Ventura County, LoSan, and then Metrolink got together to consider alternatives. In the past, the most feasible route for a lane in the train, or a train to complement the lane, was to work with LoSan. But most recently, given the change in demand and equipment availability, with Metrolink in particular, there's an opportunity to engage with them to provide additional service. VCTC, or the Ventura County Transportation Commission, is a member agency of the Metrolink JPA. And in 2020, the decennial census identified the South Coast area, or the Santa Barbara urbanized area, as a large UZA. By virtue of that change, going from a small to large urban area, now when certain operators operate rail service on the corridor, not Amtrak, but Metrolink would be eligible, additional Federal Transit Administration revenues would come from the feds, or the FTA, to the region for operations. So that presented a new opportunity to work with another operator and potentially generate a significant amount of revenue that could help sustain the service. So the concept that Metrolink and Losan have proposed and put together is to have a morning train operated by the Metrolink service operator, which does, operate in Ventura County South, generally speaking, paired with an afternoon train currently operated by Amtrak Surfliner. So that said, there would be two train providers, but effectively running one train service for the commute shed between Ventura and Santa Barbara County. The goal is to have the integration of the tickets between the two operators so that passengers, it's seamless for them, that they don't see any difference in service. They can go to one place and buy a ticket for both or for their whole day's commute. And that we would have a multi-party agreement in place for the service. It is a bit complicated. Next slide, please. As we have a number of agencies involved. So in addition to SBCAG in Ventura County, by the way, our partner, Claire Grasty from the VCTC is here today. We also have Union Pacific, who owns the right-of-way, the Metrolink JPA, of course, and Losan. In particular, though, Losan is funded by the state, so quite often we have to engage with CalSTAR, the California State Transportation Agency, as well, as they have oversight over the Losan activities. So as I mentioned, we've had a number of planning activities take place over the past few years. We've been meeting with Metrolink and our rail operator partners, but also with the state with regard to funding. The folks at Metrolink have prepared a proposal, general concept overview of what they're going to provide if we move forward. And most recently, the development of a startup agreement, which is effectively the next step, the next first step, I should say, in implementing the service. That is, they've done a number of planning activities for us, kind of pro bono to date, but the next step would be for finalizing negotiations with both Union Pacific and Losan so that they would be able to operate the service, coming back to both SBCAG and VCTC with a potential operating agreement, and then from that point forward, mobilization of crew and training so that we could begin. Next slide, please. So, what is in the Metrolink proposal, or so far, that they've been able to provide to us? The preliminary proposal identifies a start in Moore Park Station. There's a layover facility that Metrolink currently operates and uses there. They would use a currently available slot that's effectively a trip that Losan is able to operate on the Union Pacific right-of-way. Again, UP owns the line, and they determine the number of trains that can move through at any given time, both freight and passenger rail. And there's a current maximum that Losan has available to them. They are not utilizing one of their 6 available slots, and that is a round trip that would be provided to Metrolink. The train that Metrolink would operate would return mid-morning, go right back into LA Union Station to recirculate as part of the Metrolink service. So effectively running a trip from Moore Park to Goleta during the commute hour, arriving in Goleta at approximately 8 a.m., and we'll show the schedule in just a moment. And then from there, it would return back to the Los Angeles Basin at leaving Goleta at approximately 10:30 in the morning. So a rather attractive trip for passengers leaving Santa Barbara and Ventura County to get into Los Angeles, a trip that does not currently operate. The windows for implementation, based on the way that the rail operators have to schedule their service along the corridor from San Diego to San Luis Obispo, is effectively both in the spring and fall. We've had a number of opportunities available to us, to implement service, and we're targeting the October timeframe to begin that service. The anticipated total cost for year 1, which does include those startup costs of approximately $450,000, are about $4.4 million in the first year. And I should add that both VCTC and SBCAG have set aside funding for the first year of service, which we're calling the pilot demonstration period. Next slide. So here is that service, the schedule that we've been talking about. The train would leave Moore Park just after 6:30 in the morning, move through Camarillo, Oxnard, and Ventura before arriving in Carpinteria, Santa Barbara, and then Goleta. The goal is to arrive close enough to a traditional work day that it's lucrative or attractive rather to commuters. We do also offer the Coastal Express bus service, which runs before and after these trips all day long, and over the years have integrated the ticketing with Losan Surfliner with the Coastal Express, so that passengers have a number of options, whether they use the bus in the morning or the train in the afternoon. They can continue to do so with one ticket. That said, The prior train in 2018, which Losan operated for a brief period of time, actually left the LA Union Station area just after 4 a.m. and arrived in Goleta when it was on time just after 7 a.m. That train was plagued with on-time performance issues over the years for a variety of reasons, but generally speaking, there's a lot of traffic on the train line headed southbound in the morning. And when it would arrive in Goleta, it was often 30 to 45 minutes late, which from a work perspective might actually be more attractive for most riders, but from an on-time performance or reliability standpoint, it's very difficult for a passenger to utilize, right? If you're out there on the track waiting for a specific time and arranged your day, you want to be able to rely on that trip to come at a certain time. There has been a number of activities between Metrolink, BNSF, UP, and Losan to coordinate times that operate along the regional rail line, the Losan corridor. And they've recently completed an optimized train study or schedule, if you will, with Losan at the lead to make sure that all of these slots are more consistent and have, generally speaking, less variability on the line from a congestion standpoint. So that said, despite starting in Moore Park and effectively missing all of the traffic that flows downstream from Ventura County South, the trains themselves are running more and more on time as a result of that optimized train schedule. And our friends at on the Losan JPA may recall some of the planning activity. Next stop. Thank you. Or slide. So as I mentioned, VCTC and SBCAG have set aside funding for this project. Conceptually, the principle between both agencies is to split these costs 50-50 as much as possible. In the past, SBCAG picked up the subsidy associated with operating with Losan completely, but in this case, both VCTC and SBCAG have agreed to fund the service equally. Now, that said, there's an initial startup plan that we've agreed to, and there's potentially the operating agreement that we have funding for on a 50-50 basis. But as we go forward, where VCTC has provided one-time funding, SBCAG has reoccurring funds through Measure A. So there is a need for state discretionary grants in the future to help offset the imbalance between the counties, but the overall goal is to maintain that 50-50 split, including with using FTA revenues on the long term, over the long term. Next slide. So the startup agreement that's before you today for consideration will facilitate both the finalization of negotiations between the rail operators, Union Pacific, but as well the development of that operating agreement that will come to SBCAG and VCTC for consideration. The crew training has been priced into the startup agreement. That's identified by Metrolink. As well, the mobilization of train equipment, which is available, so we'll be operating effectively under a leasehold with them. The customer service roles that Metrolink will provide. The promotion has been priced, although it's not a requirement that we take them up on it. We can do those things organically here at the agency as we did in 2018, but Metrolink has offered that as an option. And finally, just to summarize, the total costs are approximately $450,000, with the first 120 or so going toward, roughly $150,000 going toward the negotiations themselves. So the development of the plan will be a short piece of this, but the remainder is related to a number of hard costs associated with promotion and operation of the service. And as you can see, the split between the agencies is, again, 50-50, approximately $225,000 apiece. Yes, next slide. Thank you. So this is our anticipated timeline following today's action, should we move forward. The folks at Metrolink and Losan have been engaged for a number of months and years, frankly, on this topic, but in order to really get Metrolink and their legal counsel moving forward, we need to agree to this agreement, and that process and those negotiations will take place over the next couple of months, with the item coming back before this board, anticipated for the summer, both to VCTC and SBCAG for consideration, and then Metrolink before we proceed. Then training and promotion will take place late summer, early fall, with the service beginning in October. There is the possibility that Losan will take over this service in the future. They are interested in operating it once again. They recently received a Federal Railroad Administration grant for approximately $27 million to restore and enhance service. Their primary objective, though, in restoring service is to add back the service that was cut between San Diego and Los Angeles specifically. But there is talk about expanding service between San Diego and Santa Barbara, Goleta, or potentially San Diego and San Luis Obispo. That service would require additional train equipment, which is not yet materialized. There's a number of factors involved. In particular, there's a set of train sets being purchased by the state for the Capital Corridor in the San Joaquin's JPA in the northern end of the state. When that equipment arrives for the San Joaquin's, then there will be additional train sets, effectively hand-me-downs, from that service provided to Lausanne. But all of that is still a bit speculative. We don't have a timeline yet of that equipment coming to bear in the north end of the state. So their hope is that they could begin operating this service in approximately 1 year from our start date, or a little before, maybe August or September of 2026. But that is yet to be determined. If Lausanne were the operator, there's a good chance that the state would have to fund that service as they have in the past and traditionally fund the Lausanne JPA. But going forward, we would like to begin on this pilot now. There's a need for service today. If Lausanne were to take it over, that would be fantastic, but there would be opportunities to extend with Metrolink and utilize that Federal Transit Administration revenues as well as state discretionary grants if we were to go the route of working with Metrolink. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board members?
Do you have a fare box recovery or a cost per rider? You glossed over it real fast and said it really wasn't there, but there's a need, but.
Well, so we have received a preliminary cost estimate from Metrolink, approximately $4 million a year to operate. So it's a little under, maybe 3.9, 3.8 in change. That said, with fare revenues anticipated about $500,000 per year, quick math, I think that's just under 25% to operate the service. So we would be, 10% to operate the service, so, or over 10%. So we'd be looking at about a 10% fare box recovery ratio. However, it's not so much the ratio or the cost per rider. We want to make sure that we get these riders on board. We have a number of grants already received available to help subsidize the cost of that service. But to your point, Director, the average fare that we're hoping to charge per direction would be just over $5, so about a $10 per day round trip, which is what was previously charged to start. And then going from there, we would incrementally increase that over the years if we continue with the Metrolink system.
What are your analytics based on? Do you have current ridership that you're basing this on, or anticipated future hopefuls, or?
The train sets themselves can carry approximately 450 to 600 people, depending on the length of the cars or how many cars you add, right? We're hoping to get an approximate 200 people out of the gate each direction. And that would be approximately $500,000 per year. We haven't yet done the analysis on the return trip that would be operated at about 10:30 in the morning. So that's just purely the one direction going into Santa Barbara in the morning and then going back in the afternoon.
So you don't have hard statistics other than you're hoping to have 200 riders, but you had some in the past. You were running 40 or 50 riders, and you were trying everything you could with bicycle additions and free coupons and.
So I believe that during the past demonstration, the ridership varied quite a bit depending on the time of when you were to look at that service. So when it was running on time early on in the demonstration, I think we averaged just over 115 riders per direction, utilizing the tickets that were sold specifically for that purpose. But this time around, we're hoping we're going to hit about 200 people per day out of the start, given the increase in the congestion and the increase in demand for service over the years, and the improved time and reliability that will come from the service.
Have you done any surveys to see that you're going to double your past ridership numbers?
We receive requests for this service quite regularly. So every year, both SBCAG and the Ventura County Transportation Commission goes through the unmet transit needs process. It is a common comment that we receive all year long, but especially during that cycle. We don't have hard data on, say, the latent riders or the folks who may be out there that are looking for this service, but we do know that between the Coastal Express bus service, this service operating previously, there were anywhere between 500 to 700 passengers on the Coastal Express and this bus service per day running between the counties.
So is there a fare box recovery threshold that allows you to continue to operate Can, you know, I mean, is there 20%, or what is your magic number? If it drops down to 5%, as you historically shows this, does that allow you to continue to operate?
No, we'd have to make a business decision to determine whether or not it was prudent to keep going.
Thank you.
Director.
Very good. Director Perotti?
Thank you, Chair. Well, a lot of the question I had, well, first, my first question is, when we discussed this at the Sub-Regional Planning Committee in South County, I thought this was a 3-year program. Has it always been like a 1-year pilot program, just?
We're anticipating options to extend of up to 3 years, yes.
Okay, and so, like Director Mosby said, will it be continuing based on ridership?
So there are a number of factors. Obviously, ridership and demand, I think, is primary. But in addition to that, the Union Pacific right-of-way only allows for up to 6 round trips between LA Union Station and Goleta. LoSan effectively owns that opportunity. And LoSan wants to operate additional service as well. So they'll have right of refusal over any service running between the counties.
So you're going to have some work ahead of you with the outreach, I would think,
Yes.
to really get the word out. And I'm really excited to see the time frame, so it's not so early in the morning and gets riders here in Goleta, say 8, a little after 8. I think that's doable. And then there's also 2 options on the way back. So I think what I've heard in the past, that if you miss your first train and you're in Goleta or Santa Barbara, what happens? You know, now there looks like there's 2, so that's a really plus. So, okay, those are my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Capps?
Yeah, thank you. This is very promising, and I want to thank all involved for the work over the years, you know, for our climate, for traffic congestion, for people's quality of life. So just to piggyback on what Mayor Perotti said about outreach, that's where my attention always is focused, is making sure that you all have help. And I've seen some analysis from SBCAG on, you have a fairly good sense of people commuting. For example, about 1/3 of our county employees commute. So how can we, in that short period of time that you have for outreach, I think it's just a few months, what's the plan? Can we be involved in the plan? How can we ensure that employers like the county or big institutions help get the word out so that people choose to participate?
Yes, through the chair, absolutely, Supervisor. Our goal would be to work with all of the largest employers in this county, and we have been working with them over the years, and we hear from them quite often about the number of folks coming from Ventura County, from North County, all over, that they need to travel into the South Coast on a daily basis. Cottage Hospital, for example, started their own van pool, both from the north and the south, due to the lack of available options for their workers. In particular, it's tough with Cottage Hospital. They have effectively 12-hour shifts, so the evening hours are a bit more difficult to serve. But generally speaking, our goal is to work with all the large employers, primarily out of the gate, so that there's a good understanding of the options available. Like I said, we do have grants to help facilitate additional pass products for the riders. And in the past, what we provided where I think it's a bit wonky, but the TDM program, the Transportation Demand Management Program, or Traffic Solutions at SBCAG, goes and meets with each and every employer that we can to give the menu of options to the HR transportation coordinators that are out there, so that they can make sure that those benefits are well known and available to their staff. We also have partnered with certain employers for pilots to meet them and match them 50-50 on certain transportation products, so that could continue as well. It is a matter of their interest, though, and we do have a potential pilot coming with the county for carpool, in addition to the city of Santa Barbara, so that is something we're actively doing behind the scenes.
Okay, I guess we'll just ask if we can know more about the outreach plans when they're developed, so that
Yes.
we can amplify them in our own communities.
Yes, as noted during the presentation, one of the deliverables by Metrolink is to provide support for promotion and outreach of the service itself.
Great.
And we'll be working with them to get that information out with you.
Excellent, thank you.
Director Silva?
Thank you. So I have to apologize. I'm more of a, I'm going to go through a narrative base with you just to understand the ideal customer of what we're looking with, if that's okay. I was just trying to understand. So if we take this train situation we have at this moment, we leave or we get into Goleta at 8 a.m. And then you'd have the desired train return time would be 4:25 p.m. is kind of the target, which would mean you would have had to leave about 3:55 in theory from your place of business to make it to the 4:25 train, giving traffic, bus schedules and all of that. I was just wondering, I don't want perfect to be the enemy of done, but are there means for us to adjust as we see patterns? Because I could see adoption as an issue, that the average employee who arrives to work at 8:30 can't really make a train that they have to leave at 3:55 or 3:45 to catch if they're doing an 8-hour workday for that. So I know that the other option is they go to the 6:30, which means you'd stay until about 6 o'clock at work. So I guess there's that, but I was just wondering, how are we able to adjust to ensure this is successful going forward so that we can, is that flexibility within there? And I know that some things, this is now talking about joint different businesses, but I just wanted to know, is that something we have that option for?
Yes. The rail line, although it's 351 miles long and each stop is timed almost to the minute so that we're careful not to engage in any kind of congestion along the track, there is analysis done quite often with LoSAN and all the other operators for on-time performance and service improvements. However, I'll add that during the 2018 demonstration with LoSAN, approximately 50% of the afternoon riders took the bus in the morning. So where you had maybe 180 people going back on the train at 4:30 in the afternoon, quite a few of them took the bus into Santa Barbara and Goleta at much earlier hours. In particular at UCSB, the average shift time start is approximately 7:30 in the morning. So folks leaving UCSB in the afternoon were able to catch that 4:30 train without issue. In addition, county probation had a number of shifts that were pretty amenable to the current train station out of the Santa Barbara station. But our goal is to make sure that all options are on the table. People can take the bus in and the train back. They can take the train in and the bus back. There's bus service until about 7:30, 7:45 at night, leaving Santa Barbara County. And there's a number of trips that come into places like Raytheon where they have shift start times of about 4:30 in the morning, or 5:15 in the morning. I used to work for VCTC, so I've got some of the timetable hard-coded, but there's a number of folks who have, 410s, 980s, and so in light of the increasing telework environment, there's a lot of folks who do get credit for their work hours while commuting as well, if they're able to be productive.
I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you. Those are all the answers I was hoping you to be able to answer for that one. And then my other only question was, I was curious with the return time that you have for the LA southbound, does this qualify for the flyaway situation with Metrolink that would allow them to use the train returning to Union Station to connect to LAX? Because I would assume that would, I just wasn't sure if that's, like, if we've gotten that far into it, but like, I would assume one of your highest markets would be to be able to connect by train and transportation of one ticket to LAX in terms of increasing ridership and traffic.
I would have to defer to LoSAN for the eligibility between the tickets and the flyaway. But my understanding is that there's a variety of flyaway trips that leave LA Union all day long. And I think that there's transfer arrangements between the operators.
Great, so the market rate is there for that as well? Or
This is an existing trip. The 4:30 trip from Santa Barbara County is an existing, well-utilized trip that does quite a good job.
Perfect.
Oh, excuse me, for the Metrolink.
Yeah.
That remains open. This is a new trip, so we can explore that and make sure that we can integrate as much as possible.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Director Lee.
Have you thought about incentivizing this pilot program to get more people to ride?
I'm sorry?
Incentives.
So, as I mentioned, we do have some state funding that is intentionally set aside to provide those incentives. So, for example, if the ticket is $10 per day, we could utilize that funding to help buy down that cost or provide a number of free rides to new riders. Work with employers that wish to match the price of the ticket with us and maybe bring down the cost for that employer or for that group if they wanted to buy tickets in bulk. A good example would be the folks at Sansum buy tickets from SBCAG and VCTC for the Coastal Express every month. And generally speaking, they buy the monthly tickets, which are quite discounted. So there will be ticket options available that Our goal is to have ticket options available with Metrolink and Losan that are reduced from a daily rider perspective.
Director Mosby.
If I could ask the executive director a question, help sell me on this. It's a 5 to 10% fare box recovery. There's a lot of hope that's going to be there. I know the lane in the train has been the big thing, but help sell me when I have to tell somebody, why we're accepting a 5 or 10% fare box recovery. How do I sell it to the taxpayers who are paying for this?
Director Kern.
I'm thinking. This has been a priority of the board, and the direction I've been given was to get this train service started, and we started it prior to COVID. We had a deal with Losan to provide the service. It wasn't ideal. Leaving from LA provided a lot of obstacles in getting to Carpinteria or even Ventura on time, so a lot of people did not have faith in the service. I think we need to try this and see if it works. I've experienced other train services in the valley that went from Stockton to the San Jose area, and years later, we were getting testimonials from some riders who say, I've been riding this since day one, it's been a life changer, I refuse to drive because for my quality life and my sanity, this is the way I go. And that train is, you're fighting for seats on the ACE train going from Stockton to the Bay Area. So these things are risky. I'm not saying they're not, but at some point in time, you have to take a risk to try it. And if it doesn't work, we'll let you know. If we did have an issue with the Losan train, there were problems that could not be solved with the service we were providing. This service is starting in Moore Park. There are no obstacles from Moore Park. I'm double checking with my staff. So there are fewer obstacles of trains going south from that location that would interfere with this train going north. So once we start in Moore Park, it's going to be on time. It's starting on time and leaving Ventura County. So I have more faith in this service that it will be successful. We have opportunity to get 400 to 450 riders on this train, and I'd like to see that happen. Our goal is half of that, 200 riders per day, but I'd like to exceed that goal and have a seating problem on this train that we need to add more cars to solve. So that's, it is a big decision for this board to make. It is an investment in the future of transportation coming to and from Ventura. And I'm following your lead in making this happen. So if you don't want to make it happen, this is your time to say no. If you want to see and you want to try it, this is the time to say, let's try it, see what happens, and we'll be back a year from now to tell you how it's going. Thank you.
So you answered my question. So the slogan that I was hearing here was, hopefully it'll work, and you think you came up with a good slogan, just try it. So, thank you.
Director Hartman.
Oh, well, it is a pilot, and I'm not sure where the lane in the train came from. Was that part of Measure A? I do believe that was that was part of the trade-off to get all the
Yes.
money to go into the 101 widening was
Yes.
we had to do this. I mean,
Yes.
that was a commitment to the public. So
Yes,
you could
we've
expand
been
on
setting
that.
aside money for providing this train since the inception of Measure A, which was passed in 2008 with 79% of the voters. I always have to check that. And it started collecting in 2010. So the voters have been investing in this train since then. So we do have that set aside of funding available for this purpose. And so as your executive director of this board, I'm following your lead and in making that happen and making our promises to the voters kept.
Yeah, and I just want to underscore, promise to the voters, and if we ever want to go back on Measure A to extend it, we've got to say we kept faith with what they said. So that, I think, is a really important point for all of us to remember. And I know we did have problems with service. We did have a kick in the gut, really, with COVID. And so we've never really had an opportunity, I think, to really give this a chance. So I'm tremendously excited and appreciative of all the hard work that's gone into it. And I agree with Director Capps. Anything we can do to get the word out and to encourage people to use it and to, beat the drum, I think is really, really important. And I know you did have a whole bunch of different incentive programs going, and I'm sure we'll build on the experience that we've had in the past.
Use it or lose it. So we need to get, pardon my expression, butts in seats to continue the service moving forward. So thank you.
Director Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Rouse. And if I remember right with Measure A, that the Lausanne or the train portion is coming out of the South Coast portion, right? So the North County portion of Measure A
Correct.
is staying for local
Correct.
streets and roads. South
Correct.
County is getting less for local streets and roads because they are diverting some of the monies that would typically go to paving your streets to pay for this train.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, so,
That and the bus service that is also coming from Ventura County is out of the South Coast pot of the Measure A program. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify that because, that's why I think I'm okay with moving this forward is because it's a decision of the South Coast leaders to decide to spend these dollars. I think up in the North County, we'd much rather spend these dollars on pavement and our already failing infrastructure. We don't have the luxury, especially since we don't have $1 billion of investment in our half of the county, so we need to husband those dollars a lot more strictly. So, I'm okay with this. It's something that I'm not looking to double down in the North County at this point, but if the South County wants to try a pilot project and see if it works, and maybe when we do the successor to Measure A, this is a good case study of some of these ideas, whether they worked or not. I think that if it doesn't work, and this wants to be in the successor Measure A, I think that's going to be a hard sell to the voters, right? I don't think that the voters are going to want to subsidize something with such a low fare box recovery moving forward when there's other options. So.
Director Clark.
Thank you. What's the timing of the Ortega siding project?
Through the chair, that's a great question, Director. So presently, the Ortega siding project, which has been awarded to a firm by Lausanne, they're in negotiations. They believe they'll be under contract by March of this year. After that, they go into design, but construction isn't for a number of years, probably 2028 forward.
Okay, thank you.
Director Perotti.
Just real quick, I just would like to let you know that since I'm very excited about, we have our new train depot coming, and we would like to see trains coming to this wonderful new depot that's broken ground, and we're getting started on it. But I have done a little bit of homework, and I have done some outreach, and I would suggest strongly you get in touch with, and I can give you the contact information, the head of Google in Goleta. He is very interested because he has a lot of staff that come from Ventura and Carpinteria. So, and he said he would definitely promote that.
Thank you.
And then, Mr. Bonfilio, forgive me if you covered this already, but is there an integration for the local transit agencies to attenuate their routes with what we do with our scheduling? Because the scheduling sounds like you've got something set, but it may change as time goes on, as demands are analyzed and whatnot. So are we coordinating with our local transit agencies to
Yes.
do the last mile kind of thing?
Yes. So as we've done in 2018, we'll be working with MTD again. They'll be launching an additional service later this year called the Wave in the city of Goleta, which is an on-demand service that will operate in the areas, including the train station between, say, UCSB, the train station, the airport, Trader Joe's in particular. Everyone's really excited about that. But that on-demand service is scheduled for later this year. In addition to that, we'll re-engage with them for those first last-mile shuttle connections.
I just think that kind of information, going out to the public as you try to launch and make these things successful is going to be important. Along with what they did when they first got Clean Air Express going was try to compare owning and operating a vehicle with the idea of riding in from North and South County. And my last thing is that I know that from other agencies all over the country, that starting any kind of public transit is going to take a very extremely heavy subsidy, and they're probably ongoing subsidy pretty much the life of the, it almost never has full fare box recovery. I don't even know if there is one, maybe.
It's called Calvans.
Yeah, we have Calvans. I forgot about that. Sorry, Director Nelson, yeah.
So that's absolutely correct. And, our fare box recovery estimate for the beginning is meant to be extremely conservative. It's a less than half full train that we're talking about here. So the hope is that obviously ridership grows and we can adjust those fares over time. But the introductory fare, to keep it low and to make it attractive, is what we're talking about with that lower fare box recovery. I'll just add too that the amount of revenue that's available between both parties more than covers the estimated startup cost, the operating cost, and the additional of FTA revenue over time will also cover that cost. So the fare box revenue, I hate to say, is additive, but our goal is to make that as high as possible to preserve Measure A.
Thank you. Director Harbin?
Oh, I think you raised a really good point about the last mile. And I think, working with employers on shuttles, e-bikes, really having a robust rollout for connecting to the destination from the train station is important. And I'd love to see that plan come back to us.
All right, very good. Are there any further questions from directors? And if not, Madam Clerk, are there any public speakers to this item?
Chair, I see two hands raised. Mark Chatillo and Sullivan Israel. I'm not sure who had their hand raised first, but let's just go ahead and start with Mr. Chatillo. Go ahead, Mr. Chatillo.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of SBCAG. I'm Mark Chatillo. I'm addressing you today on behalf of the Committees for Land, Air, Water, and Species. But my office has been involved on behalf of a number of different groups over the last 25 years on transit issues and the train in particular. And we were involved in Measure D back then and both versions of Measure A. And you're correct that the train is hardwired into the Measure A program. But stepping back, recognize that this moment we're in today is the culmination of decades of effort. Thousands of hours of community and agency efforts have been applied to this. Originally, the vision was for a commuter train, a train set dedicated to commuter travel that would go back and forth between Santa Barbara and Ventura. That proved to be too difficult initially with Union Pacific. And so the lane in the train was born, codified in 2008, and made a central part of the 101 corridor. That was a compromise, first with Amtrak, now Metrolink. But it represents the best we can get right now, and we support you in approving it. Now, it's important to remember, for purposes of ridership, that as long as the freeway is flowing freely, driving will be the preferred method. But Caltrans's own projections of traffic on Highway 101 show that once the widening is completed immediately, traffic will be worse than it was before it started for the AM trip. And within 3 to 5 years, the afternoon trip will experience more congestion than it did before the project was started. So as congestion mounts, there will be increased desire for people to use alternatives, and the train that'll be going by and not be caught up in congestion will, of course, be a more secure option. The other point I want to make is that while a train is generally promoted as a tool to bring choice riders into public transit, it also adds options and increases the quality of services for transit-dependent riders. So there's an important equity component of what is before you today. So in sum, Clause and the various other groups that we've worked with over the years supports this service and supports this action, and we would strongly encourage your board to adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Go ahead, Mr. Israel. Oh, I forgot to allow him to talk, sorry. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Sullivan Israel, speaking on behalf of Strong Towns, but also myself. Very quickly, I would just like to say we support this motion in full and the added train service. We would especially like to thank the staff of SBCAG for putting this together and their tireless work. It does go appreciated, we're noticing, and thank you. As far as the justification, the previous commenter mentioned increased traffic. There will definitely be increased traffic thanks to induced demand, even as the freeway is widened. And looking at the travel demand models, which the staff has already done, but just to repeat, yes, there's demand for this service. And a commissioner asked a question about fare box recovery, and just as something to think about, I'd like to put out there whether the same questions are asked of freeway projects. When the 101 was widened, did anybody say, is this going to make money? No, the answer is no. And the answer is no, it doesn't, right? The freeway costs money to widen and costs money to maintain and does not make money back because people aren't charged to use it. I mean, it gets funded through taxes, but not enough to cover the cost, which is why grants are needed. And so we see that as something worth subsidizing because it moves people throughout the region and helps the economy. And so I asked that, why is train service not looked at the same way, or why is freeway service not looked at the same way? Transit service seems to get extra scrutiny. Is this going to make money? Is it going to recover money from fare box? I don't think that's a super important question. The question is, how many people can this take off the road to both be better for the environment, but also to make traffic better for people who still do want to drive? And how can it help our economy in doing such? And I think the answer for both is yes. It's worth doing. It's worth subsidizing. So once again, please support this project. Thank you.
All right, very good. Are there any further public speakers?
Yes, we have one more. It says iPhone Dennis, so I'm going to let him talk, and if you could state your name when you come on. Thank you. Go ahead and speak, Mr. Dennis.
Okay, I just unmuted. Thank you. And my name is Dennis Story. I've been there from the beginning with 101 in motion to create an opportunity for commuter rail to our town. I underscore what Mark and Sully Israel have said. And this is a train whose time has come, and the lane on the train was penned by Greg Hart early on in the campaign for Measure. And I really support this issue, and I'm very excited to see it come forward. And Paula, great news about the train station, and it certainly helped with this project. Thank you.
All right, are there further speakers, Madam Clerk?
Chair Rouse, we have no more public comments.
Okay, very good. We'll bring it back to the board. Director Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Rouse. I heard the public comment from Mr. Israel about do roads pay for themselves, and they actually do. The fact that we have gas tax and those grants that he was asking about or was mentioning are grants that are created from gas tax. So it's really, there's still coming from the taxpayers ultimately. Most of public transit is subsidized by gas tax that's coming from road usage. So I would hope that he might reconfigure or recalibrate his thinking in that way. Many people are paying the gas tax on top of what an important piece of it is for our economy. You know, the 101, some of the ridership is local, but most of it is coming through the 101 where we're moving goods throughout our state so that we can have commerce moving our crops from fields to coolers to eventually to grocery stores to our homes. So it's an important portion of making our system work. And so, just want to make sure that that's perspective is recognized as well.
All right, thank you. Chair Harmon.
I'd like to make a motion. We're ready for that.
Okay, if
So,
there's no further, well, we can make a motion and deliver it
Sure.
further if we'd like.
so that we approve and authorize our executive director to execute an agreement with Southern California Regional Rail Authority and the Ventura County Transportation Commission to provide the startup costs for this, as staff recommends in the board letter today.
Motion by Hartman.
I'll second.
I think Mr. Silva got you first. So Director Silva second? All right, very good. Is there any further discussion to the motion? Mr. Lee, you have your, Ms. Moses? Okay. Ms. Hartman? Okay, very good. With that, we'll have the vote. We can do a voice vote on this again, Madam Clerk, okay? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you.
Excellent.
All righty. Where are we at? Oh, the Executive Director's Report. Director Kern.
Yes, thank you, Board and Mr. Chairperson, members of the Board. First, I'd like to introduce a newest member to our SBCAG team, Ernesto Diaz. He's our new grant analyst. He has a background in public service, grant administration, and community development, and brings a range of valuable experience to our team. Excited to make a meaningful impact in our programs and projects that benefit SBCAG and our local partners. I also want to let the board know we had a productive meeting last week about safety issues surrounding Vandenberg Space Force Base. I always stumble over that. The majority of the discussion was about the intersection on State Route 1 and Santa Lucia Canyon Road and what could be done in the short term to improve safety. Caltrans will be scheduling a meeting shortly to discuss the possibility of eliminating the left turn movement from Santa Lucia Canyon Road to Highway 1, and I will let you know when that meeting is scheduled. Other options were discussed, but that's not a decision of that group that met that last week. That would have to come through our planning process and programming process to move anything greater than that forward. I also want to congratulate the San Ynez Band of Chumash Indians. They were awarded $1.4 million for the San Ynez Valley Regional Active Transportation Connector, also known as the Trail Project between Buellton and Solvang. They received this funding from the Federal Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program, which only tribes are eligible to receive. So we really appreciated their efforts. This award is a remarkable achievement and a testament to the tribes and Director Hartman's perseverance in making this happen for the community. So I look forward and seeing that project advance. Congratulations to the City of Goleta, receiving a new $11,156,330 from investment from the bipartisan infrastructure law to help construct the new underpass connecting residents to Old Town Goleta. This is part of their San Jose Creek bike path project. So the grant will support the City of Goleta in the construction and the separation and dedicated multi-purpose underpass through under U.S. Highway 101 and the railroad tracks and connecting to 217, eliminating a barrier and connecting residents to Old Town Goleta, to education, employment, housing, and all the other great stuff north and south. So I appreciate the support. This board has also supported this project through the Active Transportation Program, as well as the Regional Early Action Planning Grant, the REAP grant that we funded a year or so ago to support the San Jose Creek project. So it's cobbling together all the money to make sure that that great regional connection happens. Cyclemania, we're starting our planning for Cyclemania, which will be May of 2025, and the theme this year is Bike Your Way. We are focusing on activities for all ages and abilities. Residents or groups can apply for mini grants up to $500 to help organize events throughout the month. And they also can submit any events that they're already doing on their own to be on the calendar. So we need the grant requests as well as anything to go on the calendar by February 7th. So I'm trying to get the word out to get more and more activities during the month of May for Cyclemania. And last but not least, thank you to the directors who have met with our consultant to facilitate our retreat. It's 30 minutes of your time to think about the future of SBCAG and where we're going and why. She's nearing the conclusion of her interviews with the board members and city managers and has only a few more remaining. So if you're getting those annoying calls from Susan, please call her back so she can schedule that with you. It's not painful, I promise. And it will be a key role in shaping the agenda for that day, which is February 27th from 10 to 3, something like that. And we'll provide lunch and have a good time talking about the future of SBCAG, and I'm really looking forward to that discussion. So with that, I'll pass it back over to the chair, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Rouse. You mentioned the Santa Lucia discussion that happened with Caltrans and some of the other partners there. It sounds like that's probably time for that to become an item, at least at the North County Subregional first, so we can have some discussion about
Great.
how we're going to handle our advocacy. I know that there was a solution that was, or at least a short-term solution that was suggested in that meeting, but I think that that causes a lot of other issues and probably needs to go through a CEQA process. So I don't know if that's actually the answer. And, the only other answer they were talking was 20 or 30 years out,
Correct.
which is completely unacceptable. So I think we're going to need to engage in that sooner than later as an organization to really tackle that. And I know that our partners in that area, and it's not just Vandenberg Space Force Base, this is a section along Highway 1 between the Santa Maria Valley and Lompoc Valley where there's been numerous deaths, especially among young people over the last year, and something I keep bringing up in my meetings with Caltrans. And unfortunately, that people say, does somebody have to die? Well, yes, many people have had to die, and now Caltrans is finally taking it seriously, not seriously enough, but I really think this organization needs to be engaged in that conversation.
I will add that to the next agenda. Thank you.
Director Clark. Al, you have your light on, so I didn't. Oh.
Sorry.
All right, very good. With that, we'll move on to the Caltrans District Director's report.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Orchid Monroy Ochoa, and I'm the Office Chief of Transportation Planning in District 5. I'm here on behalf of Scott Eads, who wasn't able to make it. I want to start by talking about the Gaviota Lane closure, a 1-mile segment of southbound US 101 between Highway 1 and US 101 interchange in the Gaviota Rest area. That has been reduced to 1 lane, which started January 9th. And the lane closure of the number 2 right southbound lane will allow Caltrans to complete bridge improvement work, guardrail upgrades, and drainage repairs. This lane closure is expected to be in place until spring of 2025. The north and southbound Gaviota rest areas will remain open during the lane closure. And there will be planned overnight closures of the rest areas to complete remaining work. The closure schedule will be announced once confirmed. Like mentioned, the Highway 1 partner meeting. Thank you to Supervisor Nelson and the representative for Supervisor Hartman for attending Caltrans January 9th partner coordination meeting on the traffic circulation for Highway 1 near Vandenberg. With the help of partner feedback, Caltrans is formalizing recommendations will be presented at the upcoming meeting in February. We will share that public meeting detail in the board and community as soon as they are finalized. One of the last items that I want to report out is on the applications that are due next week for the Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program. They close next week on Wednesday, January 22nd by 5 p.m. District looks forward to reviewing the application and working with all you on those who get awarded. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from the board? Director Hartman.
I just wanted to thank Caltrans doing work on the 154 roundabout, and there were a lot of concerns about the way the traffic was being managed, and you put in a stoplight at Roblar, and the community is very, very pleased to have that. Just a caveat, they want it long-term.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Rouse. And I'm just going to take this opportunity since Caltrans had their construction projects for new members. If you look at those projects and you divide those north and south, you're looking at about 86% of the projects are in the South County and about 14% are in the North County. So again, those are, you're going to hear me as a squeaky wheel up here about that number. And if you start to, add in active transportation plans and companion projects, it's more like a 90-10 split on regional dollars that are coming to our county between north and south. So just wanted to highlight that for everybody because that's going to be a common theme coming out of this seat. So just want to get you guys prepared.
Very good. Anticipated. Anybody else on item 7? Okay, with that, we will move on to the committee meetings and Calvans. Director Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Rouse. Exciting time in Calvans. As I'm digging, you guys pointed me to this in actually 2023, and I've been digging in deep. I'm currently the vice chair, and I'm realizing what a special organization Calvans is. I do believe it might be the only full cost recovery transit agency in the state, if not in the nation. We are doing a great job keeping it afloat, and not only do we do that, Because we actually report the miles that we create, and we don't get any subsidies for those, and that's the 5311 and 5007 accounts, we're actually returning about $20 million in grants and for our MTDs and our MPOs out there. So we're not only operating in the black, we are also giving back to the overall pool. We've just commissioned we're actually going to now do a fee study so that we can figure out how we can expand, because we do just kind of skim by without those subsidies, and we want to really expand. I'm hearing many more organizations that want to partner with us in the future. We have about 700 vans right now out on the road now throughout the state. It's my belief we probably can triple that by partnering with other jurisdictions. I know just the farmer community, we just don't have enough. And so supply chain's been a big issue in the past. Those are starting to resolve. One of our other impediments was whether we were going to have to comply with the Clean Fleets regulations from the state. And so that had limited our ability to buy new vans because there's not electric vans out there to buy. We've now gotten an exemption from CARB to 2030. So we're off the hook on that. So that really opens us up to go ahead and buy other types of vehicles so that we can expand our fleet. The other piece of news is that CalVans was a line item in the Proposition 4, which was the climate bond. So there was $15 million set aside for that. As the vice chair, I've been holding firm that we don't move forward on spending any of those dollars till we have a business plan in place so that we can make sure that we're good stewards of those dollars. And those dollars are really is to allow us to embrace an electronic or e-vehicle in the future. So a lot of exciting things happening in CalVans. We're making CalVans sexy again. And so if anybody has any questions or concerns, they can always reach me offline to discuss that.
Very good. Any comments or questions? Item 8. Okay, if not, we'll go then to. Sorry.
This wasn't a formal activity of the 154 Safety Committee, but kind of an outcome of their work. I've been working with CHP and Caltrans. There will be new signs going on the 154 to discourage large trucks from using 154. Unfortunately, the Google Waze mapping says that 154 is the shortest way to go, so we're trying to figure out how to divert. It also turned out that there was some inconsistency between the CHP and Caltrans about whether large trucks that are allowed on 101 on federal highways are allowed on state highways. And we finally brought a group together yesterday and resolved that there is a certain section of the 154 on the Santa Barbara side of the roundabout that California-sized trucks less than 65 feet in shorthand are allowed, but bigger ones are not, and we get a lot of that coming in. So we're working on signage to discourage those trucks. It's very difficult to enforce because there's no place to turn around when you pull a truck over, and so it's been an ongoing conundrum. And really the basic solution will be trying to work with Google and Waze, and people have said that that's very difficult. But if they want to go the shorter route, but if there were a way to say for big trucks, this may not be the best way because it's narrow and windy. And so if anybody has any ideas about that, I'd sure like to hear them.
All right, very good. Thank you. Any further on item 8? If not, we'll move on to 1-minute reports. Anybody have a 1-minute report?
Well, I just have to underscore what Margie said about the grant that the tribe got. This is so exciting to everybody in the Santa Ynez Valley, and it goes from the west of Buellton all the way to the 154. We call it the Valley Connector. And I hadn't fully realized, but Margie pointed out that this is really an implementation grant, first step, so it'll get us shovel ready. And so this was kind of a concept in our minds, and the city of Buellton, the city of Solvang, the tribe, and SBCAG really came together as a committee and helped us secure this along with MNS that did the writing. And so it's a real glimmer of hope for me in the new year.
Thank you. Director Perotti.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I want to acknowledge what Ms. Kern said about our $11.4 million grant. Tomorrow we'll be having a media celebration at Johnny D. Wallace Park at the beginning of the trail there. And I just want to really thank our staff and, of course, Congressman Carbajal. He'll be there to present a check. I don't know if we've ever received one of those big checks like he's preparing to do. That'll be fun. And I want to also thank our staff, and especially Teresa Lopes and Public Works staff for writing the grant, and we were successful. It's been on the record, this project's been in the works since for 23 years, and it started out with the county and their county and regional planning, and then once we became a city earlier than that, but we also put it in our bicycle and pedestrian master plan. So it's a public safety issue. It's not just for recreation. It's to get people safely over to the north side and the north side safely over to the south. So we're very excited and thrilled. We didn't expect to get this grant, to be honest. We were just like, okay. So
All right,
thank you.
any other 1-minute reports? Our Measure A Grant Fund at Santa Barbara Junior High Multi-Use Path has spurred us to begin an e-bike safety program. I think Director Kern was contacted by Jessica Grant about perhaps helping update for everyone to see how that goes. But that's kind of the first bite of the apple of trying to wrestle this problem to the ground, which is turning out to be a bigger and bigger problem, particularly in the city of Santa Barbara. I don't know about everybody else, but we're feeling it. If there are no other reports or no other comments, I would like to, first of all, say I would like to thank all the North County people for coming down for this meeting. I appreciate that effort. And we're going to, and we will adjourn until February 20th in Santa Maria. And that's it. We're adjourned.